Welcome to Marty's Fly Tying Bench. And today I'm tying a bass fly, a foam frog. This started out as what was known as an STP frog because it's it's made with foam, cut with an STP frog cutter from River Road's creation. This is a frog foam from Hairline. It's already got dots printed on it. And started out as an STP frog. I made a few modifications to it to make it a little more sleek and tried to come up with a name for it. Some of my older colleagues looked at it and go, "Oh, Jeremiah, bullfrog." And then the ones that grew up with the Muppets call it Kermit. And my niece calls it Prince Charming. I decided to go with that. So there's a lot of steps, so I better get started here. Starting with mustad 3366. You can also use a Tiemco 8089 size 10. The mustad's a size 2, the Tiemco's a size 10, but the hooks are darn near identical. Go figure. They got the right amount of shank length for this foam, so that's all I really needed to accomplish. I'm going to start off with some 2mm by 3mm red foam. I'm going to tie this in. It's kind of a tongue, just kind of a neat little addition. But the rest of the red foam is functional and important. I'm going to wrap it around so that when I get to the last step and fold the foam over, I've got something to glue it against. I've got something to wrap it onto. I don't have to pinch the foam down onto a hook shank. Now, don't make your turns of thread very tight or it'll cut this stuff. I'm going to come up and get a couple extra turns on just to hold it in place. I'm going to start off with tan for the underside, and you're going to measure it so right where the foam starts to get big, this little stub is just to help give you something to tie it in, and I'm going to place that right where the hook shank starts to bend. And just start tying it in, and as I get towards the back, I'm going to let it migrate to the bottom. The foam's kind of tender, so don't tie it too tightly or you'll cut the thread. I chose this thread. It's 140 denier Danville's, 140 denier UTC would work as well, but you want a floss type thread so that it doesn't cut into the foam. Now, since I want the dots on top, I'll need to tie this one in upside down. And I'm going to measure it so that it matches up with the tan one, but for reasons that of the way it's made, I'm going to slide it back just a tiny bit more. When I get the thread back to the position of both of them, I'm going to pinch them together, tan on bottom and green on top, and jump the thread back and tie it down just a little bit down onto the bend. Now I'm going to move my thread to the hook point. That's where I'm going to tie in the legs. The legs are regular old round rubber, and what I did was I peeled off a strand 4 strands wide. Let's see if you can see that. Get the light. There you go. And I tied a knot in one end. Now, I can pull this knot tight, and as you watch, it'll just sit there and get bigger and bigger and loosen itself. So at the end, I'm going to put a little water-based head cement on it. For now, I'm going to lay it on the near side of the hook, and the knurled part on my vise is kind of my index. I put the knot right on that, so when I put the other leg in, I can get that joint identical. Now, you don't need to wrap very tight with this rubber or else it'll separate or start to creep around the hook. Oops, thought I had a knot tied in the back side. It's a simple overhand knot. You kind of work it down until when you pull it tight, you're not wasting too much. And set this one on the far side, match the knots up for length. Okay, now I'm going to fold these so that they're one on each side and wrap loosely about almost to where the foam starts, but I'm going to leave a little bit of opening and then come back loosely, and now when I get to the very stubs of the rubber, I'll make some tight turns. That will keep those legs from pulling out. The loose wraps will hold them in place on each side. Now before I pull it forward, I'm going to go ahead and install the front legs. When I do fold it over, my thread is going to be right behind that bump. So I want to place the leg somewhere behind that, towards the bend of the hook. Now, the legs are made, front legs are made with 3 strands for this size. And this time I'll tie a leg in with an overhand knot, and then I'll just move up and tie another overhand knot. Instead of tying one on each end of the rubber, I'll tie them right next to each other. And I'm trying to get it so that the distance between them is a little bit less than the hook shank. Yeah, that's pretty good. Now, I don't worry about whether those knuckles are making the fingers point forward or back. It all looks good when it gets in the water and starts moving. Just a couple of crisscross turns and try and get an even amount between the hook and the knuckles. It doesn't take a whole lot of turns. Now I'm going to move my thread to the back, and you can see the rubber legs are about halfway in between my thread and the foam. What I'm going to do is pull the bottom one under, and you see how far that sticks out past the eye of the hook? I want to push it back until it's just barely in front of the hook, about the same length as that tongue. Now what that does is there's a little crease in the foam in the back. That fold opens it up and lets those legs stick out straight. Now I've made my tie right across, but rather than pull it tight, I'm going to actually reach up and pinch that foam before I pull the thread. And that'll keep it centered on the bottom, nice and even underneath. Before I fold the top one over, I'm going to get a little super glue on there. That will help keep this thing from twisting on the hook. Now when I push this over, I'm also going to push this one back towards the back, pinch it in place, make sure my thread goes right through the same opening on the bottom. I'm going to pinch first and then tighten. Just a couple of turns. Now putting those hips on there like that makes these legs kind of lay out to the back, which I like more than having them stick out to the side. They'd be all kinds of crazy angles if you simply folded them over flat. Now I'm going to get in front of the legs, start with the bottom, get that thread right behind the bumps, and then with my fingers I'm going to pinch it into place first and then pull it tight. Just a couple of turns. Now I'm back to the super glue. Get some in the back, some at the front threads. I'll even get some along the sides. Every once in a while that helps it adhere to the upper. Now if I need to, I can shorten or stretch this top one I just want to get it in a place where I can get the thread behind those two index bumps. And again, I'm going to compress the foam with my fingers first, then tighten up. That lessens the chance of it cutting. Just a couple of turns, and now I'm going to whip finish right in place, just 3-turn whip finish. There's going to be enough super glue leaking through to hold that in place. Plus, when I tie these for the shop, I put a coat of flex coat over the top, and it's even better than head cement. Now, for fun, I'm going to put just a drop of super glue gel on each side. And these are Montana Fly 3mm eyes. Put that right on top of the super glue, and I'm just using the bottom of my bodkin to move them if I need to. And there we go. Once I put a coat of epoxy on, that will finish them off. Now, to make these knots stay a little tighter, what I'm going to do is get some water-based head cement. And you see where the rubber is crisscrossed right here? What I'm going to do is get a little water-based head cement and put it on that spot, so when I pull this knot tight for one last time, it'll suck a little of that cement underneath and hopefully keep it from coming undone. Do that all the way around. I think I've already done it on the front legs. And then just reach up and hold the legs and stretch, and you can separate those out as fingers. Now, I usually match these legs up in the back so that the flippers are about the same length. And I go ahead and separate those as well. So there you have it, Prince Charming. If you use Flex Coat, use Flex Coat Light and put a very, very light coat on the top. I don't worry about the bottom. Bass's teeth are going to chew this one up. It'll keep working, but you can preserve the top part a little bit if you get a little flex coat on it. That tongue just cracks me up. Prince Charming. You can get this fly at Elkhorn Fly Shop. You can get the materials to tie it. Elkhorn Fly Shop, Loveland.